Many of us can remember a time when we walked or biked to school and when our classmates were trim and fit. All of us can just look around our neighborhoods and our communities and see a nation that is not, that is no longer fit. A lifestyle which is a time bomb exploding before our very eyes. Reports from the Centers for Disease Control over 3 years ago, and continuing since then, and more recently, just a week ago, by the Surgeon General of the United States, and even a story in the New York Times about employers planning obesity fight to cut to them a $12 billion a year cost, remind us almost daily of the growing girth of America. Well, unlike Mark Twain's observation about the weather, we're here to do something about it. Today we join forces, Democrats and Republicans, to introduce the Pedestrian and Cyclist Equity Act of 2003, which we'll simply call PACE, for many good reasons. And the best reason is that over the years I've served in Congress and worked here as a staff before that, it's the first time in my experience that we in the legislative arena, in the policy arena, have an opportunity to change the lifestyle habits of an entire generation, to make a difference in living and in living style and in health for an entire generation of our fellow citizens. We must not let that opportunity pass us by. We have worked, by we I mean the groups gathered here today, for several years, first in crafting the bicycling provisions of ICE-T and expanding those in T21. Hundreds, thousands of bicycling organizations and pedestrian groups across America have worked to implement the provisions of ICE-T and T21, building over 30,000 lane miles of bicycle and pedestrian trails. Lance Armstrong would have to do 15 Tour de France to bicycle all those miles of bike lanes. And then in the summer of 2000, an experiment was launched with Safe Routes to School in the Marin County Bicycling Coalition and the California Transportation Department and the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, NHTSA, providing the funding for a project in Marin County for bicycling and a pedestrian project in Arlington, Massachusetts. A year later, both projects were enormous successes, and we will hear about those success stories in a moment. But knowing that Safe Routes was successful in its seminal project was a great comfort. But what was a surprise was that 26 states nationwide spontaneously picked up on the Marin County experience, launched their own Safe Routes to School programs, and came here to Washington to participate in a conference we had 2 years ago to discuss the success of that initiative and to take it further. And so now we have crafted a three-part program that is incorporated in this legislation. The Transportation and Active Living program title, the Safe Routes to School program title of the bill, and the Non-Motorized Transportation Pilot program title of the bill. The Transportation Active Living program is modeled, I say in all honesty and fairness, after the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation program, Active Living by Design. It was an inspiration, a good one I thought we could take a step further and have crafted into this legislation to promote community environments that make it easy for people to be active in their daily lives by changing their physical environment as well as their mental environment with community design and architectural policies and initiatives. To integrate land use and transportation planning to promote non-motorized travel choices and incorporate pedestrian and bicycle-friendly features into community planning and landscape design and transportation initiatives. It's not enough to change the physical environment, you also have to change the mindset. And we include considerable funding for education activities which proved to be a foundation of the success of Safe Routes to School and the pedestrian program in Arlington, Massachusetts. Probably the heart of the legislation is Safe Routes to School, which was something I thought was a good idea when I heard about the Centers for Disease Control report of 300,000 Americans a year dying of obesity or its complications. I called the bicycling groups together and I said, we got to do something about this. We can change that. Let's call it Safe Routes to School. And they said it's already been done in England. I said, well, it's still a pretty good idea. After 3 years of the initiative in the UK, more bicycles were sold in the UK than automobiles. Our goal is not to displace the automobile or to compete with it, but to provide a realistic opportunity for a healthy lifestyle to make bicycling, pedestrian activities a true mode of transportation, to take the place at the table of transportation. We'll hear more about Safe Routes to School from Debbie Hubsmith. And then the non-motorized transportation pilot program is modeled to a considerable degree after the experience in the Netherlands, where in the 1970s an initiative was undertaken to greatly expand the use of bicycling, to make it a true mode of transportation, with such effect that today 30% or more of all trips in the Netherlands are made by bicycle. We can do it in America. We can change the lifestyle habits of an entire generation. So the legislation includes a non-motorized pilot program to try to replicate that Dutch experience in a selected few cities that will be competed on a national basis. Those are the highlights of the legislation. I would like to announce that there are 15 co-sponsors of this legislation, and most prominent among them is Congressman Earl Blumenauer of Portland, Oregon, who has been an advocate, a visionary, a cityscape thinker, a designer, and policy advocate who has been a joy to work with in the Congress.
And I appreciate the title here, PACE. Those of you who cycle, you know, you're in a pace line. Let me tell you, if you're in a pace line behind Mr. Oberstar, when you're drafting behind Jim Oberstar, it's a lot easier to pedal. And I think we're going to have a great time peddling this legislation. And I'm pleased that we have some young people here ready to travel safely. I spend a lot of time working with communities, as Mr. Oberstar indicated, dealing with livable communities. What makes them work well? Being able to have children get to school safely on their own is one of the key indicators of a community that's livable, that's sustainable, that is attractive. It's not that hard. Jim mentioned, you need to have a plan, you need to put some money behind it, you need to get down and make it happen. And this legislation is going to provide the framework. I watched what happened in my community. We've got a great local advocacy group, Bicycle Transportation Alliance, actually was presented with an award for its education program, getting into the schools with curriculum, training, good materials, being an aggressive advocate with the city, and it's made a huge difference in our community. It has indicated what you can do. You look at states like Texas that has had a safe route to school. They established what is a $3 million fund. In the first year, there were $45 million worth of requests. You offer it and they will come, they'll put it to work. It's the same thing that happened in California. Jim, the $250 million annually set aside here is a good start. But I'll guarantee you, we get this puppy rolling, and there will be an amazing demand from communities large and small, all across the country, to utilize the most efficient form of urban transportation ever designed, and to make it work for the people who need it. It's for the health of our children, as has been referenced. It's for the health of the rest of us. It's for the health of communities. If you have alternatives to simply widening roads or putting pedestrians in harm's way, what you've done is you've made that community healthier by giving people choices, by softening the impact of the automobile, by making previously inaccessible neighborhoods more attractive. So it's for the health of the kids, it's for the health of the communities, and I will dare say that it's for the health of the political process. There's a lot of yammering going on across the way on things that for most of America we ought to be able to get together and solve problems. But here we found with our partisan bicycle caucus that has over 100 members of Congress from both parties all over the country, everybody's got a bike story and they'll get behind it. They are happy to work to improve cycling in our nation's capital and in their home. And if we tie the healthy initiatives for children, making schools more accessible, getting rid of that double rush hour that we have because people are rushing to drive kids to school, it's going to, I think, help us rediscover our problem-solving muscles across the way in Capitol Hill. And who knows, we make our kids and communities healthier, I think it'll make the political process healthier as well, and I look forward to working with Jim to make it a reality in this Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Another strong advocate for healthy lifestyle, and one who practices what he preaches and represents in part of his district, Alexandria, a very lifestyle conscious community, one that practices a good deal of what we're preaching in this legislation, Congressman Jim Moran.
Thanks very much, Jim. I want to congratulate Earl for all the leadership he has provided the entire Congress in getting us to focus on what's important. And he understands that smart growth and intelligent means of transportation affects all of our communities and is a principal ingredient to the quality of American life. Jim Oberstar, just a little personal story. When my daughter had a very serious medical condition, he said he was offering up a prayer for every mile that he would cycle. Well, when I realized that he averages 250 miles a month, that's a hell of a lot of prayers, and I know that's one of the reasons she's doing so well. But Jim has a heart of gold and a mind like a steel trap, particularly when it comes to transportation. We have a lot to thank him for, his leadership in aviation safety and emphasis with public transit. That's another area where he and Earl are working so strongly together, and in bicycling, safe cycling. And what this legislation is doing is really trying to reverse course. You know, when I used to have a paper route from the age of 10 to 16 miles we would bicycle, you know, deliver newspapers. Has anybody seen a newspaper boy on a bicycle today? They drive around in cars and they throw the paper out of the car window. They never get out from behind the seat of the steering wheel of the car. You take your life in your hand in many metropolitan areas when you try to bicycle into work, including in the Washington area, really. And we can't, parents that know how healthy it is for children to walk or to cycle to school in many areas can't let them because it's not safe. And this legislation is designed to make it safe so they can do the right thing for their bodies and their minds and for the community. Speaking of reversing course, 10 years ago you'd go to Beijing, and I know my colleagues have done so as well, and you'd think, here's 100 million people, really, tens of millions on the streets, and they're all riding bicycles, and somehow they get around. Well, today, you look at Beijing, and they've they're following our example, and now they can't move. They're choking in congestion. So we've got to reverse course, and this will help to do that. We need to make bicycle trails not only safe, we need to make them contiguous. We need to complete the East Coast Greenway. We got to do things like the Parkway. We try to put money in every year. Many of you have helped on the George Washington Parkway bike trail. We need to make it not only contiguous, get it from the Teddy Roosevelt Bridge up to the American Legion Bridge, over to Maryland, connect the communities. That's the kind of thing we need to be doing. Right. Well, we'll get Jim in Arlington more often too, and we connect it. He rides up to Harper's Ferry now and back on a typical weekend day. It's great legislation. Thank you for your support of it, and I thank the congressional leadership behind me for because I trust that they're going to make it a reality. Thank you.
I now want to ask Rich Killingsworth, Director of the Active Living by Design program of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Rich was at the Centers for Disease Control, head of the project that studied obesity, that ignited a fire in my heart and behind my pants, and got me going on this thing.
Well, isn't this exciting? It's a tremendous opportunity. Mr. Oberstar, I'm honored to appear with you today to discuss an issue for which you've been a champion and a leader for so many years. The purpose of my discussion today is to identify a tremendous opportunity that PACE potentially provides in inviting back physical activity into the lives of our children and adults. Our neighborhoods were once valued for the presence of people, especially children who walked and bicycled their sidewalks and streets. Now, opportunities for walking and biking have been engineered out of daily routines. This is especially damaging to children for whom physical activity is a vital part of their overall development. Most children, unfortunately, spend a disproportionate amount of time watching television or playing video games. And this may explain why nearly half of young people today are not vigorously active on a regular basis. As a result, we have seen a dramatic increase in obesity in this country, making it the fastest growing epidemic. In 1960, 24% of Americans were overweight. Today, more than 110 million adults, about 64%, are overweight, and nearly 1 in 3 is obese. What is particularly alarming is that this percentage of children who are overweight has tripled in the last 30 years. If these trends continue, and I have every reason to believe that they will, the incidence of chronic diseases associated with physical inactivity and obesity will intensify. So these trends place us at a pivotal point in public health. We now realize that the built environment and transportation choices shape our opportunity to engage a healthy lifestyle. Walking and bicycling have been identified as two most efficient modes of transportation and effective behaviors for physical activity, but we have ignored opportunities to promote them as a strategy to increase the health of our nation. If a national effort to promote bicycling and walking is supported, we can begin to address many of the issues that plague the health of this nation and its mobility. In closing, we are all accountable for leaving a legacy to future generations to thrive and to grow. The opportunity before us today is that we can work to leave a legacy that supports environments that offer choices for routine physical activity for our children through safe routes to school and other active transportation opportunities. Leaving a legacy of this magnitude will create a more robust transportation system where opportunities for walking and bicycling are safe and plentiful.
And now a human dynamo who has mobilized the bicycle community of Marin County, Debbie Hubsmith, who made the safe routes work and continues to make it work. Debbie.
I would first like to express my heartfelt appreciation to Congressman Oberstar for introducing the Pedestrian and Cycling Equity Act for 2003. My thanks also go out to all of the current and future co-sponsors of this important bill, which helps to tackle some of America's most difficult problems, the rise in obesity and traffic congestion. Safe Routes to Schools provides a fun, effective, and safe way to get American children back on their feet and on their bikes. The program has been proven successful all around the world and in the United States. I have had the pleasure of helping to organize the Safe Routes to Schools program in Marin County, California, a suburban and I would mention hilly community just north of San Francisco. In just a 2-year time period, we have increased the number of children walking and bicycling to schools by a whopping 81%. We've also decreased traffic congestion around the schools by 38%. This is because of our hero parents and because of the partnerships that the program is built upon. Law enforcement, traffic engineers, city councils, schools, and parents all collaborate for the health of our children. They organize special events like walk and bicycle to school days, contests like the Frequent Rider Mile program. And parents also organize walking school buses and bicycle trains to help lead groups of neighborhood kids to school together. This builds enthusiasm, and the enthusiasm spreads quickly. We also work hard to fix our streets. In Marin County, our Safe Routes to Schools program has resulted in new sidewalks, multi-use pathways, bicycle lanes, crosswalks, and increased traffic safety around intersections. This has been possible thanks to a state program in California that dedicates federal transportation dollars to provide capital funds for infrastructure projects to make Safe Routes to Schools work. After all the encouragement in the world isn't going to get kids to bicycle on a 4-lane highway with no sidewalks. Thanks to Safe Routes to Schools, life in Marin County has improved dramatically. The streets are now filled with children walking and bicycling to schools. Their presence has truly brought new life to the community, and the smiles on their faces remind me and everyone else of the joys that they experienced while bicycling to schools as children. It is my deepest hope that children all across America will have the opportunity to participate in a Safe Routes to Schools program. The PACE bill that is introduced by Congressman Oberstar would make this vision a reality. Thank you again to Congressman Oberstar for lighting the torch that we can all follow.
A wonderful friend and colleague on the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, an original co-sponsor of the bill, has joined us, Congressman Nick Lampson from Texas.
Thank you. All right. I like that kind of welcome. Thank you very much, Congressman Oberstar. It's a pleasure to come over and join you and to support this piece of legislation. I haven't been knowledgeable of it for a very long time, but not long ago I began to meet with a number of communities down in southeast Texas to make the attempt to try to create safe routes to school. I learned personally what a difference it made, really without even thinking about it. I've commented often about how I live 2 blocks in Texas away from a supermarket, from my home that I've lived in for 23 years. And I've walked to that supermarket twice. Yet here in Washington, D.C., my apartment is about 6 blocks from a grocery store that I walk to at least once a week. And I was commenting to someone with whom I was walking one day, and the question was, do you have sidewalks at home? No, I do not. It makes a difference. It makes a difference for them. It makes a difference for the bikes. It makes a difference for the people who are comfortable and will choose to take a few minutes to walk someplace, because it's only a matter of a few minutes, and when it becomes a matter of your health, it's worth doing. The program that you just mentioned and that our president supports, which is
an active living program.
An active living program that's obviously promoted by George Bush, our president, in Texas. Those are the kinds of things that will be benefited significantly by our passage of this legislation. So it makes me very pleased to be able to join my colleagues in the support of the legislation and to see what kind of tremendous support it has among the public. And I thank you for it. We look forward to questions.
Our final speaker, who has contributed enormously to advancing the cause of bicycling and pedestrian and active living, Elissa Margolin, Executive Director of the League of American Bicyclists. Another human dynamo. She is terrific.
Thank you, Congressman Oberstar and Congressman Blumenauer and Congressman Moran, Congressman Lampson, and distinguished members of our future. Thank you so much for being here. As Congressman Oberstar just told you, my name is Elissa Margolin. I'm the Executive Director of the League of American Bicyclists, the National Membership Association of Cyclists with 300,000 affiliated members. I'm also the chair of America Bikes, the campaign working for positive outcomes for bicycling and the reauthorization of T21. From the Good Roads movement to the Safe Roads movement, please know that the majority of Americans who report that they want to walk and bike more will get behind this effort. But as Congressman Blumenauer pointed out so well, this bill is about more than bicycling and walking. This bill is really about health and community. Did you know that 3/4 of all Americans report that they would support creating safe routes to school for their children? That's right. So I think that instead of speaking to you as executive director or president of a national movement, I'd rather speak to you from a constituent base that's known for its enthusiasm and known for its passion and known for its relentless efforts. I'd rather speak to you as a mom. Because Safe Routes to School is being embraced by moms across the nation. Because we know about the obesity epidemic and the overweight epidemic, because we see it in our kids, we see it in their classmates, and we see it in the school. We know about the lack of community in our neighborhoods because we're living it, and we're trying to work through it. So we want our children to enjoy the pleasure of walking and biking to school like we once did, but we want to make sure they're safe. And the beauty of Safe Routes to School programs is that it gives this wonderful gift to our children and to communities, but it takes care of moms' concerns as well. As Debbie pointed out, it fixes our streets. It reinstates crossing guards. Remember them? And most importantly, it provides the fun and joy of walking and biking in a group with safety education and adult oversight that help keep our children safe. So Safe Routes to School is a program that moms can get behind. And I believe I speak for many moms when I say I'm ready to give up my carpool time. I'd rather spend it leading a walking school bus or a bicycle train. But before I do, or any of us do, we need PACE and we need safe routes to school. So for healthy communities, healthy kids, please help us get PACE through and get behind safe routes to school. Thanks very much.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.